All right, good afternoon or evening, everybody, and welcome to February 7th, 2023, February's caucus meeting. To all of our guests, welcome, and to all of our administrators and board, thank you very much for being here this evening. Under announcements, just one that we had a policy meeting that occurred, a policy committee meeting that occurred beforehand, at which time we reviewed several policies, some which will go for first read. Hopefully coming up in our February meeting. So transitioning into personnel items for the board agenda coming up. When we look at personnel, unfortunately the first one that comes in is our resignation of our assistant to the superintendent for finance and operations, Mr. Pete Bard. So personally, I would like to take a moment and thank Mr. Bard for his service to our school district, and wish him well as he transitions to a little bit of a shorter school district and commute to East Stroudsburg School District, where he will serve as the Chief Financial Officer of East Stroudsburg. So we're going to retain Mr. Bard for about 60 days and still put him to work and try to squeeze as much of him out as we can, and he's committed to continue with full foot on the gas pedal. So thank you.
Thank you.
Moving along to resignations, we have Ashley Balisic from the position of paraprofessional. She's going to actually transition to the CEIU and be a CEIU employee here within our district and in the classroom in which she's currently serving in. Unfortunately, Mrs. Michelle Comp, she's going to transition to a nearby school district where she accepted the position at Greenwood School District. And we will miss Michelle and wish her all the best. And we certainly will send our well wishes. And happy if she's going to move that she stays within our county, and we can still do some inter-county professional learning and still share resources and opportunities. Miss Wendy Hershey. She's resigning from the position of special education teacher. Mrs. Hershey has been with our district for several years, and she's transitioning to a leadership position at the CEIU to continue her growth as she aspires to someday become a director of special education. And the resignation of Pam Hoover. Pam is a graduate of Susquenita, and she'll be going over to Cumberland Valley School District. The next is a retirement. All the congratulations to Mrs. Abby Foy, as she announced her intent to retire on September 1st of 2023. And I would be remiss not to say that Mrs. Foy has spent 34 years of great service to Susquenita School District. So I'm sure she's influenced a lot of students and made such a positive difference in the outcomes of our students in 34 years of her educational career. So we will definitely miss Mrs. Foy, and maybe we could talk her into substitute teaching. I don't know yet, but we'll give her a little chance to rest a little bit after that. Employment, we have Joy DeVico from New Buffalo for paraprofessional, as well as we have a Blackhawk team custodian, Aclesta Judy. We have Lily Miller, paraprofessional, Abby Neville as school psychologist, and Dr. Christopher Reese coming to us as school psychologist as well. We have Aaron Reistofer as a Blackhawk team student custodian member, Mr. Denny Shambaugh as a long-term substitute math teacher for us, and Victoria Singer as a Blackhawk team student custodian member. We also have a change in status for the amended hours for Kelly Reichert as she transitions to the position of a receptionist from her paraprofessional position. We have a leave of absence as Mrs. Timchak is going to be out on leave starting on March 11th to May 15th. We're excited to announce some successful completions of 90-day evaluations. We have Jessica Mutzabal, so congratulations to Jessica, paraprofessional at the middle school, and Thomas Rao, secretary to the Director of Special Education, so successful completion of 90 days. Co-curricular assignments, Mackenzie Gammon, stage crew director, and we're excited and thank Mackenzie for spending the time to work on our outstanding upcoming musical. And please check our website for more details and information on how you can purchase your tickets for Cinderella. Athletic coaches and volunteers for the spring 2023 season: Austin Andinacio, assistant coach; Brian Such, JV coach; Eric Fisher, assistant coach baseball; Kathy Kisner, middle school head coach field hockey; Mar Bigley, middle school assistant coach field hockey; Denny Shambaugh, middle school head coach; Chris Haynes, middle school assistant coach; David Jenkins, middle school assistant coach. And again, these are soccer thus far: Callis Wexler, middle school head coach; girls soccer, Catherine Wilson, middle school assistant coach, girls soccer; Roddy Reed, head coach softball; Derek Bauer, assistant coach softball; Mark Britcher, assistant coach softball; Mr. Terrence Shepler, head coach boys track and field. We're also looking for a track and field jumps coach. So if anybody out there is interested in working with our student athletes, specializing in long jump, triple jump, high jump, and if you have pole vaulting, we're interested in that as well. So anybody interested in that position, please let us know. If you don't want to be paid, that's okay too. Amanda Bell, head coach girls track and field, and Heather Chung, assistant coach girls track and field. Volunteers: Chris Albright, volunteering for baseball; Mike Lebo, volunteering for baseball. That's the father of Mike Lebo, who's going to be our baseball coach. Larry Yeltz, that name may sound familiar to some baseball fans. What is it?
Jeltz. It's actually, his given name is American Steve Jeltz. He's straight for the Phillies and Royals.
Thank you. Volunteer for baseball. Kyle Gilbert, volunteer baseball. Dave Jenkins, volunteer for the girls soccer program. Katie Humphrey, volunteer softball. And the Honorable Rick Knapp, volunteer for boys track and field. Athletic volunteer: Sam Freeburn, for boys basketball. We have some substitute staff, which I'm extremely excited about. Sarah Deitch, Duncannon, with a chemistry certification, and 5 guest teachers: Allison Krause, Ed Fleming, Gretchen Oates, Elizabeth Page, and Kristen Sandusky. That rounds out our resignation, leaves, transfers, and employment. Any questions on that list? Absolutely. That was good. All right, looking at agenda items, we will have student representative presentations. We will have treasurer's report, payment of orders, and we're looking to do a motion to approve the Career and Technical Center, Cumberland Perry Career and Technical Center's budget. We have that on the notion on the caucus presentation tonight to go over that, and that will be a 1.79% decrease from the 2022-2023 school year. We are also looking to approve, as our last agenda item, a general contract service agreement with school psychologist Mrs. Ellen Nelson to be one of our contracted school psychologists. And Mrs. Nelson did retire from our school district, so she's going to come in and help us during the transitional period before our school psychologist will be able to join us in March, later March. So that rounds out our agenda items, and I'm going to turn the microphone over to Mr. Peter Bard for a review of finances.
Okay, thank you very much for your time tonight. I want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to serve as your assistant to the superintendent for finance and operations. It is a bittersweet day as the opportunity came up very suddenly, and it was a opportunity that is really a life-changing and life-altering move to make. That opportunity is 25 minutes closer to my house, and it is a substantial career move when it comes to the pay scale. So I thank you guys for the opportunity to serve you, and I will continue to do so and continue to serve the taxpayers here for the next 2 months and leave you guys in a much solid and more stable position than when I arrived here 12 months ago. So if you look at the financial packages that I had given you, first we'll start with the monthly reports that I gave you, and then we'll transition into I guess if we look at the I guess we'll just do, for right now, I guess we'll just, because there's but two budget things on here, I guess we'll just do first, for right now, we'll just do the financial packs that I gave you first, and then we'll just do them for right now. We'll talk about the budget books at the end of the, we'll do the budget update later in the meeting. So we'll just do the budget packs. Right now, we'll look at the overall expenditure numbers for today. We have expended 57% of the budget at 7 months through the school year. For a comparable year, or a comparable month to last year, we were at 56%, so we're right on pace with last year's numbers. There is nothing out of the ordinary here. There are a couple of categories that have a little bit higher numbers than in the past, and especially in the maintenance budget side of things, in the 2600 function code, in the purchase property and tech services in the 300 area. And that is for where we are, number one, we are contracting out with a cleaning service, but we are offsetting those expenses in the salary section because of the fact that we are tremendously understaffed in that section. So as you know, we enacted a subcontract, excuse me, in the 400 section, not the 300 section, the 400 section, I'm sorry, my screen is very small, let me make it bigger here. In the 400 section, in the 400 object code, in the purchased property services, not the 300 section, the 400 section, we are subcontracting out with a cleaning service company, so we're offsetting some of those costs so we're offsetting them with the salary. That's why the salary is so low, the expenditures in the salary section, because of the fact that we're so understaffed in that particular regard. We're also, I did receive a question from someone regarding the transportation piece, why we only have expended $1 million in transportation, and we have budgeted $2.1 million. We will reconcile with the transportation company at the end of the year, and we will get a second bill in June that will reconcile out the transportation costs, and that will bring it much closer to the budgeted $2.1 million. So I would not worry so much about why it is underspent at this point. In the revenue side of things, we have brought in about 99.9% of our budgeted revenue, which is very strong for our district. So we have brought in nearly all of our real estate taxes. So that is very strong, and I appreciate all the taxpayers for doing that. We are collecting at a pace of we're about 70% collected on our real estate, or excuse me, our earned income tax collection. So we are collecting above what is budgeted for. So we should be on pace to exceed our budgeted amount for earned income tax as well. So we'll have to look at that as we get closer to the fiscal year closeout, and to make sure that we are properly budgeted for that. So we are collecting on the revenue side. We are having a strong year collecting revenue, and we are having a good year expending the budget in an appropriate manner. So there are nothing really that is outstanding that needs the board's attention. However, I do just want to say that we are on pace to come in slightly under budget. But remember, our deficit on our budget was budgeted at $2.2 million. I would think that we're going to come in a little bit under that, but we are on pace for pace to come in a little bit under that. But I wouldn't break out the champagne or anything like that yet. But we are on pace to come in a little bit under that at this moment.
Question, we're still going to have a deficit,
Correct, yes.
just a little less than we had projected.
Correct, because we're not that far. I mean, if you look at it at 7 months, we're at 56% expended, and it's at 7 months, we're probably on pace to come in somewhere around, if I had to estimate or and propagate it out, I would probably say about 93 to 94%. So that would be somewhere around, I would say, $1.6 to $1.7 billion of deficit.
So we'll still have to take $1.7 million out of our reserves
Correct.
to balance the budget.
And we were budgeted at $2.2 million.
Right. Okay.
And that's just a rough estimate. We won't know that until everything comes in and the audit comes out. And then I will go over that last bullet point, the budget update and the budget overview number 2 at the end, when we talk about your budget books that I presented to you guys at the end. We'll talk about that at the very end, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Bard. At this time, I'm going to introduce Mr. Craig Funk, high school principal, and Ms. Krista Snyder, assistant to the superintendent for academic operations, who's going to introduce our guest to talk a little bit about the reformatting of our curriculum guide.
Good evening. Thank you. This is the month that I always present the changes to the handbook for the upcoming school year. But we're going to start off because if you recall last year, I said we were going to add some digital components to an electronic handbook. While you have just a draft hard copy, just so you'd have that, and you'll be sent the official interactive copy once it's finalized. But I'd like to introduce Mr. Shepler, Maddie Wilson, and Elena Herrera, who, along with some other teachers and students that helped out, but these three, especially these two students, really did the bulk of the work behind this interactive model. So they're going to be demonstrating on the screen, walking you through the different embedded links for many of the classes. Go ahead.
Thank you, guys. So I'm Mr. Shepler, and I have Elena Herrera, a senior, and Maddie Wilson, a sophomore, here with us. So real quick, I know that this is in its planning phase here. It'll eventually be, obviously once stuff is approved, we'll have a final version. But if you guys, I believe it was scoped to you guys, so if you want to, now it may take some time to download, but to get it, if you go to your self-service app on your iPad and you go to books, you'll see it in there. It's called the 2023 Course Selection Handbook version 2. So again, there'll be a final of this one. It's all approved and everything's, correct and I guess perfect that way. But what this will do, it will allow students, I guess who will get it, eighth graders up through, correct? It'll be sent to their iPad. They'll open it as a Apple book. And so essentially in their library of books, it'll show up like that up there at the top left. It'll say the 2023-24 course handbook. And so when they click on that, they'll be taken to this course handbook for the high school. And so really, I'm just going to review for a second what the project was, and then I'll let these guys showcase some of the stuff they did with it. But basically, Mr. Funk came to us and talked to us at the beginning of the year about this idea to sort of update this. I think it was digital last year, but it was just maybe just a PDF or something like that. So ways to make it more interactive. So I met with, and I got to say this before I forget, I could not have done this, well, one, without the kids, two, without Chris Miller. She was a phenomenal help with a lot of this stuff, so I do have to give her a shout out. But basically, we got together, we worked with the media kids, and we came up with what we wanted to use as interactive. So teachers were given the option to decide if they wanted an infographic attached to their class or a YouTube, or not a YouTube, it's on YouTube now, but like a short little movie clip attached to their class to give more information about it, more than just the course description. And so what we did was in November or December, we met. Teachers picked students for their classes. So these guys were both signed up for other teachers. I'm not, like I said, I'll let them talk about that then. But we met here in the LGI on a busy morning. Mr. Funk provided donuts for them. And basically, we laid this out for them. We talked about what they were going to do as far as creating infographics with some standards. We wanted some things to be, included in them, and if they were going to do videos, what that would look like. And then the kids had basically 3 weeks in December, including the break and the week after, to put these products together. And then they submitted all these. And then this is where Herrera came in. She was a huge help. Basically, we had to work on this book. So I'm going to give the mic to her. I'll move through the book for you, but you can just kind of explain to them what you did and how the book kind of works.
Okay, so basically all of the students uploaded their infographics or videos into a Google Drive folder, and then I basically converted all the infographics into a PDF file and linked them into each class that had an infographic, and I put the videos, linked them into the handbook as well.
Elena did a lot of the back work, so I'll show you what this looks like here. You can see what we added in this beginning part, but we talk about what indicates the interactives in the book. So the orange eye will indicate that there's an infographic. The video will indicate that there's a video to be played with it. but then what she was saying that she did, and if we go to one here. So if you take a look at the book here, so on this page with the English, you can see that the course is in here. Not every single course has one, so there's some courses that teachers aren't, that don't have a lot. But there's just a lot. They got kids that they could for almost all the courses. Not every course has one, but I would say 85% of the courses have something associated with them, and we're hoping to grow this because there's new courses that are going to be added for next year and stuff like that. But like Elena was saying, what she did was she did a lot of the embedding. So she had to create links for every single infographic, for every video. She did all the uploading to YouTube. She did all the editing in this document. I think she really did a lot of the legwork of this. It was phenomenal. But what these kids did was amazing. So I'm going to pass this over to Maddie. She's going to talk to you about her infographic that she did. I'm going to click so you can see how this works as she does it, and then she'll talk to you about what they did that way.
I did the infographic for AP Language and Composition, and so I did a few different categories. One of them was class difficulty. People are doing it out of like 5 stars. So I gave the class a 5 because it's a college level course. And then I sort of outlined a little bit of the credits and how it's weighted at 1.6 for GPA. And the graduation requirement that it includes, and the prerequisites. And then I talked about the class content, so basically what all we do, and then how much homework we have and discussions that we do in class. And then I talked about the AP exam, which is optional, and college in the classroom, which is also optional, but they're just like components to the class that students should know if they want to take the class. They wouldn't previously know that. And then some student thoughts about the class, and that's pretty much what I did for the infographic.
So she had one of the really, really exemplar ones here. But if I switch back, if you click on really any of these things, what you're going to get is you're going to get an infographic that talks more about just the class description. It's going to talk about projects. It's going to show text that's used. It's going to talk about some of the key projects. Some of them include things like the classroom activities. Like here was a picture to the Renaissance Fair that the kids go on from year to year. Here's quotes from teachers or from students from past. So what we were trying to do is we were really trying to come up with an approach that made this more interactive, that gave kids more knowledge, especially these 8th graders that are coming in that don't know a lot of what to expect, and even just some of the courses that you read this kind of description that helps us sort of understand things and classify things, but isn't much for the students to interact with. And then the other thing that I wanted to show, let me see where I have that at. Oh, I brought that up over here. Okay, just because with connecting to the TV here, I'll give you an example of one of the videos. So if you click on one of the videos, what you would see, I'll show one of my social studies ones that one of my students that isn't here tonight made. But if I click on this now, Elena took all these videos out of Google Drive, and she actually made all these links and uploaded it all to YouTube. So this plays on the video guide through YouTube, but just when I'm on the board, it's a little bit easier to go this way. But here's an example of the videos, and they all followed a similar template. So it does recap a little bit of the stuff that's on the course catalog. It talks about college in the classroom. Some teachers included themselves, some didn't. These guys wanted to. That's my memoji.
Hi, I'm Mr. Shepard.
Some people did introductions with the teachers.
Here at Susquenita High School.
We did this from sort of like a pitch for the classes, so they had benefits.
Class is that we don't have any tests, and we do a lot of projects that incorporate our iPads and other tech resources.
We highlighted some of the projects the kids like doing.
So glad that we could work on the food truck menus. And also at the end of it, you get to try free food. So there's that.
And they are our kids, so.
Mr. Shepley's class is very funny and enjoyable.
Makes class go by so fast, you still learn a lot.
And so then we did this star rating. A lot of these have ratings, and kids could pick what they wanted to. So, they based it on, if there was a lot of homework in the class, or if the technology, what type of, these different categories, the things that you do. So, it just gave, we think that it just gave something to make this a little bit more interactive for the students and the student body. So they're just short, little 1-minute video clips. And again, you guys have the ability in that course, once you download that from self-service, and again, give it a little bit of time, it'll download into there for you, but you can go through and you can take a look at these. Again, 85% of the classes had something attached to it, so we were pretty pleased with that, and that's one of the things that we're gonna keep building. It's really easy to go back in and make changes and add this stuff as it goes on. So, do you guys have any questions about this or anything for these guys? I couldn't have done it without these two here, without all of the kids that helped build these projects. Again, C. Miller's help, Chris Miller's help. But we're really happy with how it turned out.
Question, how did you determine difficulty level?
Yeah, so that's interesting, right? So they talked to teachers, right? And so sometimes teachers thought right away that this was like, well, I don't want my class to say that it's a 1, right? You know, because they worried about this. And like, so for mine, what we said was try to move away from necessarily like the overall difficulty, but for like her, she based it on the amount of work, the types of discussions, the amount of time that's devoted into the class. So those things were put into it. Some kids didn't use that term difficulty. They just looked at specific things. Like, I don't give a lot of homework in my class. It didn't hurt my feelings that it said 1 star out of 5. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? I do, if you graded mine on tests, in my A-push class we do a bunch of tests, but in my other classes we do a lot of project-based learning, so we're not using tests. So what we did was the kids that did do difficulty, it was probably based on several things. They worked with the teachers and talked to them, because we wanted the teachers, obviously, to view these, sign off to make sure that they were okay with it. But it became a thing where, after they realized that it was more just like, you know, these individual categories, and that saying that your class is, you know, a 3 out of 4 on this or that wasn't a bad thing, and it isn't. So,
Yeah, because any art class would be a 5 difficulty for me.
Absolutely right. And so some of it is perspective, right? I like to think that my class is really enjoyable, and that makes it, you know, a 1 because it's so enjoyable. I don't know, but no, that's why we kind of, some people use difficulty, but we did a lot of specific categories.
This is a really great, I think this is a really great use of our technology to do the handbook, and I just wanted to thank you guys for demonstrating that and showing that. So I really appreciate that. It helps me when I'm doing the budget to actually make these 5,000 line items come alive a little bit. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. So to the students as well, thank you very much.
And just a question for Ms. Can we just be forced down to all the iPads of all the high school students? Just put it on it, like, don't give them a choice.
Yeah, instead of letting them download it, we can force it.
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, and great job of identifying a problem and looking to solve it. Thank you.
Yeah, they did a great job, and this is a first step, and we will add more as we go on. But this far exceeded my expectation, and it was great that the students and teachers, they took the lead on this. So thank you very much to them. At your seat, I also put, every year, give you just sort of a Cliff Note version of the changes to courses that I did this year. With the addition, we have a couple new computer science courses. It's always nice. We are sad to lose some of our veteran teachers, but it's nice when we get to hire some new teachers that have different experiences to bring in and create new classes. So we have a couple new computer classes. 2 of the ones that I'm really excited about are our home maintenance and architecture, drafting, and design, which Blake Moore will be teaching this year. The home maintenance is replacing the Wood 3 and the electronics. He has some great ideas to teach skills to students of basic home ownership, repairing and replacing a toilet, fixing that stuff I wish I would have had before I bought my last house, and watching YouTube videos. The modifications are in there, name changes, some combining of classes, and the deletion. Also looking with new staff members where we could cover the half-credit consumer management class. Working with Mrs. Snyder, we were able to actually review curriculum and see that this class can be taught with business principles and with consumer management to cover everything. which would free up another period for Spanish for that teacher.
Question.
Yes.
Rhythm and movement class, that was the dance class, right?
That is correct.
Yeah,
yes.
what happened to that? Because there was such a great hope for that when it came on board.
It really was, and the PE teachers were excited about it, and I think the initial excitement from the group of students that wanted it was there, but then beyond that, it did not take off. So they would rather eliminate that class and be able to open up a larger, because that one had some limited numbers, and they'd rather be able to work with more students.
Right.
But yeah, they
So-
were surprised that that did not take off.
So the always schedule was once, and perhaps sometimes students, that was the only period they had for phys ed, and it was rhythm and movement rather than regular phys ed.
Yes.
I remember when I was here as a counselor, we'd have kids move in with a dance class in their schedule, and Barb Adams thought that was great. And she said, because she said, some kids just don't like phys ed. You got to give them an alternative. So I'm kind of disappointed to see it go.
And it's interesting that while that specific class is the 3 PE teachers we have here at the high school, they are not the old traditional, we do sports. They mix it up with movement and things like that.
Okay.
So I could see forms of this class appearing in the other classes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
The AP psychology.
Yes.
We do offer college and the high school, though, for the other psychology.
The regular
class.
psychology class is the one that is offered for college and high school through Lackawanna. The AP Psych, we didn't even have numbers. We had 2 students, but it really didn't fit in their schedule. This year, last year was just as few. And so meeting with Mr. Brandt, he said we'd get more use out of creating a general psychology class that would allow more students to be involved, as opposed to offering a psychology class, which we ended up dropping anyway this year.
And they would still have the option to get the college credits if they
Yes,
wanted it.
for
be-
the
with that other
academic,
class.
yeah,
Yes.
for the regular psychology class is the one that will get the college credits. Yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Mhm.
If we can move on to the regular catalog, can we do that now? Or are you going to?
Yeah, if you have questions of a
Yes.
draft I handed out, I'll bring it up.
There's some corrections need to be made in the social studies section here. Obviously, glaring one is we don't have the correct name down for the Career and Tech Center, so that needs to be changed. Are we still offering the VOTEC Civics and Government for half credit? Or is
It's
that-
still going to be in there just as, yes, at this point, it's still in the catalog. Let me get there, Dr. Ruby.
Okay, it's on page 20. Because they can't take civics and government at Cumberland Perry now. When this was printed up, they probably could not.
It's still in the catalog, but like Mr. Shepler said, we're still tweaking and adjusting, so the social study.
So we need to change to get the correct name for the school in there. And it probably, when you're listing up above 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, probably would not be a bad idea to have what the Career and Tech Center offers in those grades, which I can check on, but I believe they're called American Studies, World Studies, and Civics.
Okay.
And then we could put them on the end, and World Studies at CTC.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Funk, and thank you, Ms. Snyder, for your work on the course selection handbook changes. And really, as we continue to look at courses and electives and refreshing, rebranding, reimagining different courses to allow our students, again, based upon their feedback and based upon graduate students' feedback and based upon our faculty and staff's feedback, to continually meet the ever-changing needs of our students. So we've already started to think about ideas for 23-24 already, knowing full well that it kind of works almost in a year in advance. So thank you very much. At this time, if there's no further questions, I'm going to turn the microphone over to our audit overview presentation and our partners with Trout CPA. Mrs. Craddock, if you will. Thank you very much.
Okay, can you hear me? Very good. I'll just stay back here. So thank you for having us back for your audit. We already met and reviewed the audit in draft form in more detail with Mr. Fry, Mr. Fox, and Mr. Bart. So tonight we'll go over it in more of a summary presentation. So if you want to go to the third slide, please. Just a high-level overview, we performed the audit of your June 30, 2022 year-end and planning to issue, hopefully tomorrow, a unmodified opinion. That's a clean opinion stating that in all material respects, your finances are presented in accordance with GAAP. There's also some additional, we call it yellow book, government required auditing that took place, so there are some additional reports in your package related to that. And we also performed what we call a single audit. That's a very specific compliance audit on your federal grants that you are receiving and expending. So a quick highlight at the beginning of the presentation here on your what we call governmental activities. That's a full accrual presentation of the school district's general fund and your capital reserve and capital projects fund. This is really not how you look at the district throughout the year because you're very much monitoring things on a cash basis. But once a year, that information is put together for your financial statement readers. And you can see there, compared to last year, things are relatively stable. Your current assets are at $21.9 million. Non-current assets, that's mostly your buildings, net of depreciation at $21.5 million. Over the last few years, that amount has decreased because you're usually adding less to fixed assets compared to what you're depreciating. That's just a trend. The current liabilities have decreased a little bit. That's a unique thing because last year a large payment to PSERS was made right after year-end, and this year was made before year-end, so that caused that big swing there. And speaking of PSERS, your non-current liabilities have decreased from $52 million to $43 million, mainly because PSERS had a really good year for June 30, 2021. There's always a one-year lag. So that dropped that tremendous PSERS obligation down a little bit, which was good to see. And that really drove then the result of having your equity come a little bit closer towards break even. So it's at a negative $8 million. It was a negative $10 million last year. So that's just a quick overview for the accrual basis. If you want to go to the next slide, thank you. We have a couple of highlights there. Like we said, your fixed asset additions offset by depreciation expense were mostly related to the piece of land that you bought here adjacent to this campus and some work on the field, on the athletic fields, and some other HVAC projects that were started. A new accounting standard was implemented at the district as was required related to your leases. You have very minimal leasing activity, just mostly those iPads you guys saw in use. So that's not a really big change on your financial statements. For long-term debt, your principal outstanding is at $7.2 million at the end of June 30, and you made payments of about $2.4 million, but you also issued some new debt by almost the same amount. So that was used for the land purchase and those athletic facilities. And really, if you don't borrow any additional money, you'll have all your debt paid off during your June 30, 2025 fiscal year. Then on the next slide is a little bit more information for PCERS, because I know that's a big, money drain on the district with those payments you have to make into the retirement plan. So you can see the very high PCERS rates that the district has to submit as a percent of compensation. Again, you receive half of it back from the state of Pennsylvania as a subsidy. And just some statistics. So like we said, that PCERS liability decreased quite a bit from, let me see where I have that number. The PCERS funding ratio was at 54% at June 30, 2020. And it came up to 63.6% for the June 30, 2021 year end, because the investment portfolio performed really well. So that was just a really good positive sign from there. And I just looked up because, the June 30, 2022 information has become available, but it's really not reflected year because of that 1 year time lag. And their year was certainly not great, but it wasn't totally devastating either. Their return on investments, the way they report that, was about 2%. So it wasn't the 7 they're anticipating in their actuarial analysis, but yeah, I think it could have been a lot worse too. So they are still at 61% funded, so we're still ahead of where things were in 2020. Next, let's switch to the general fund. On the balance sheet, you have the various assets. Most of them are very current assets in that presentation. Cash at $2.5 million, investments at $11 million, so a healthy, current asset liquid amount at the end of the year. One thing to draw your attention to, the second to last item from the bottom, is the health insurance deposit of $2.9 million. Based on your health insurance arrangement with the South Central Trust, you're always required to be overfunded there to have some reserves on deposit. So that's how that is reflected on your financial statements. And that can be a pretty big true-up adjustment at the end of the year. So you sometimes might have health insurance numbers that look a certain way all year long, and all of a sudden they take a pretty big swing when they close their books there, and your office then makes the final adjustment. On the next page, still on the general fund, on the next slide. There we go. We have a quick look at the revenue sources of the school district. It's almost split in the middle. Half of your funding comes from local taxpayers. The other half comes from state subsidies, and then you can see there are a few other revenue sources, including about $1 million of federal funding. And the next slide, a quick analysis of your expenditures, just to show how much of your funding, of your taxpayer money, represented by that blue part of the pie, really goes to the instructional services, basically being spent on, ways to instruct the students. On the next slide, a quick summary of your general fund revenue sources. You can see real estate and other taxes have increased from last year. That's about half of it is real estate tax collections. The other half is earned income tax collections. State sources always creeping up a little bit based on the PCERS amounts that are due. And you can see your federal sources are at $1 million, like we just said. They're usually a bit lower for the general fund, and that has still to do with all the COVID funding that you received. On the next slide is a look at your expenses. And one thing that sticks out a bit at first is that the expenses for your instructional services have decreased from 2021 to 2022, which is unusual. But one big item there is that last year you purchased about $1 million worth of iPads under a lease agreement. So they were expensed there. That was a one-off purchase that did not repeat itself this year. So certain expense categories in your instructional services, payroll, benefits, are still, they did increase from last year. Also your other purchase services, which is primarily your charter schools, are still, very high. They didn't go up, but they also didn't go down, which is really, what we're hoping to see here. So overall, your general fund really broke even, had a $67,000 surplus, and your ending fund balance was $15.3 million. On the next slide is another quick look at the general fund here compared to budget, though. So you can see that your total revenues came at $34 million, higher than the budget of 32.6. There was some conservative thinking in the budget, I think, with the pandemic still being underway, and few revenue sources did come in stronger than what you were thinking. On the next slide is a look at your expenses compared to budget, and also there you had some positive variances in the instructional services and the support services. Some of that is unfortunately for unfilled positions, where you were hoping to hire folks, but then you weren't able to fill those positions, and ultimately saved money. And then a quick look at your general fund balance. I know that's an important topic. So your fund balance of $15.3 million is comprised of really three different categories. You have the $2.9 million that's in the health insurance trust. Then you have a $9 million commitment for retirement expenses, charter school tuition, debt service, and retiree health insurance costs. That reflects some of the changes you made at the board level during this fiscal year. And then you have a remaining unassigned fund balance of $3.4 million. So that was your most important fund. Now a quick look at the capital reserve fund. That ended the year with a $1.5 million fund balance. It did not see much activity, no transfers in the current year, and not much spending either, because you really used the capital projects fund for most of the the capital project activity in the current year, which we're seeing that right now. Thank you. So that's the capital project fund. That's the fund that comes and goes. So when you issue debt, a lot of times these funds are set up to receive the debt proceeds and then to track the spending of those debt proceeds. So you can see here the $1.5 million of expenditure